I just biked around Lake Michigan, nearly 1,000 miles.
All right, that was yesterday's show, Mayor Rahm.
Take a chill pill, man.
No, you chill out. How about that?
Oh, man, Dennis and Mayor Rahm going at it. Dr. D and Mayor Rahm, 15 rounds at Vegas.
Your Ben Joravsky Show for Wednesday, May 12th is just moments away. But first, did you know that the original Constitution of Illinois in 1818 explicitly stated only white males are eligible to vote? Well, that's no longer written in our Constitution. But over 200 years later, Illinois laws still disenfranchise primarily black populations through felony disenfranchisement. Silenced. An Unlocked Civics documentary is a story of the democracy that we have created in the United States that silences millions of people who have been or are currently disenfranchised through incarceration. Premiering virtually on Thursday, May 13th. It's tomorrow at 6 p.m. Silenced. An Unlock Civics documentary examines who is included in our democracy and who is left out. Tomorrow, May 13th at 6 p.m., Silenced. An Unlock Civics documentary. Reserve your ticket right now at chicagovotes.com. And today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by SEIU Healthcare, Illinois, Indiana.
Thank you, Chicago.
The Chicago Federation of Labor are sponsors.
Thank you, Chicago.
And, of course, today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you by Chicago Reader, chicagoreader.com for all things that is to know the city of Chicago, where to go, what to do, what to eat, what to drink, what pot to smoke, what edibles to eat, that and more. chicagoreader.com, plus political columns from our very own Ben Joravsky and our guest coming up very shortly, Maya Dukmasova, Chicago Reader. And to help out the Ben Joravsky Show, chicagoreader.com/Joravsky. There you can become a Ben head. You can join the alley. You can join the avenue. You can join the boulevard. It's all up to you. I mean, you don't have to do any of those. It's all up to you. chicagoreader.com/Joravsky. And the Ben Joravsky Show starts right now. It is Wednesday, May 12th, and live from my apartment and his attic, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, our Chicago Reader colleague, Maya Dukmasova, and it's the long-awaited return of legendary Chicago journalist, the mighty Monroe Anderson. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this King Donnie Wednesday, and here's why. Because he's the king, that's why. He's King Donnie. Reigns and rules over the Republican Party. Donnie Trump does not play, ladies and gentlemen. He demands obedience. And the Republican Party, they're bending over to please. And so it was this morning. I think it happened so early, D, that I was still sleeping.
No.
They got up early to do their dirty deed. I think I was sleeping. I woke up, gentle slumber, looked at my phone, and there was the headline. The Washington Post, the dirty deeds done. The Republican Congress people, bowing to Donnie's command, had ousted Congresswoman Liz Cheney from her leadership position with the Republican caucus. Instead of the third-ranking Republican in Congress, she's now the 343rd or something like that. She's just below the office intern. She will now be the woman who's sent out to get the coffee. Well, here you go, Mr. Trump. If they could move Liz Cheney's office into the parking lot, they would. Next up, Donnie's running someone in next year's Republican primary against Liz Cheney in Wyoming. According to all the experts, she could lose because it's Donald Trump's party. It's not the Republican Party anymore. It's not Abraham Lincoln's party anymore. Let's be clear. It's Donald Trump's party. And if Republicans don't fall in line, then the line falls on you. I might have some respect for them if they weren't so chicken shit about it. Actually, I wouldn't have any respect for them at all. Who am I kidding? Put it this way. I couldn't accuse them of being chicken shit if they hadn't been so chicken shit. The dirty deed took place this morning, as I was saying, at a private caucus meeting of the Republican congressman. No cameras, no reporters. Wasn't even a roll call. They executed Liz Cheney by voice vote. So I suppose later they could all claim, I was on her side, if necessary. It's like voting president on a bill or not being on the floor at all when the vote is taken. Oh, man, some legislators in Springfield do that. Oh, God, the phone call came in at the worst possible moment, and I couldn't vote on that controversial bill, which no matter how I vote would get me in trouble with somebody's. Funny how that happens. Here's the issue. We all know what's going down. Donald Trump wants a loyalty oath from Republicans throughout the land, from the lowliest Republican councilmen to Republican state reps, party chairs, governors, congressional reps, senators, etc., and so forth. You must obey Trump's command, and that means repeating his lies, including, though not limited to, lie number 1. You must swear the oath that he was the greatest president we ever had, even though, of course, he wasn't. Lie number 2, you must contend that he led the fight to defeat the pandemic, even though, of course, he didn't. And the big daddy of all lies, that he won the presidency, even though he lost. And not only must you repeat that lie that he won, even though he lost, but you must act as though the election were stolen. And so you must promote laws that would prevent the theft of future elections, even though there was no theft in the first place. Man, it's massive gaslighting across the country. So they got these Republican clowns in states like Georgia making a law where Republican Party leaders can effectively replace vote counters who do their jobs with vote counters who don't. It'll be like what's going down in Arizona right now, that fiasco, which we really haven't had a chance to talk about. I got to bring in someone from Arizona, to talk about this, where the Republicans are doing a recount of the election that occurred in November, even though there was already a recount, in the hopes of finding votes. All of a sudden they go, oh my God, this is proof. It was stolen. What a joke. In Georgia, this is what they want. They want to take a Secretary of State like Brad Raffensperger and replace him with Trump's stooges. You know what happened in January. Trump personally called Raffensperger and asked him to find 11,000 plus votes that Trump needed to win the state from Biden, and I have win in quotes. Raffensperger said no, and now Trump wants him ousted for defying a direct order to steal the election. And instead of standing up to Trump, Republicans have passed a law making it easier for Trump and his obedient followers to replace independent-minded officials with puppets who obey his command. This is a scary time, folks. And you imagine if Democrats in Springfield tried anything remotely like that. Imagine if our old friend, House Speaker Michael Joseph Madigan, pulled such a stunt. My goodness. The wailing, the crying, the chest beating, the bleating about political bosses from Chicago. No, it's always Democratic political bosses from Chicago. Oh, my goodness. Mike Bost, our good friend, the congressman from downstate. I'm sick of it. Remember that guy? Sick of Michael Madigan when he was a state rep. Now he's a congressman. He voted with the rest of them to kick Liz Cheney out of the party position she had.
I'm sick of it. Every year we give power to one person.
Right. Yeah. And Jim Durkin. Let's not forget him, the so-called moderate Republican. Where are any of these folks when Trump punishes Cheney? Hiding under their desks, where Republicans generally be found whenever it is required that they take a courageous stand. I got to give Liz Cheney credit. I never thought those words would come out of my mouth. Given a Cheney credit. And as I said the other day, I just get a big kick in a bizarrely ironic way at Donald Trump's response to Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney says she will not, under any conditions, subscribe to the big lie that Donald Trump is insisting Republicans repeat. And so as a result, Donald Trump says she must be ousted, and he calls her a warmonger because the Cheneys, of course, invented the pretext to invade Iraq. At least her father, Dick Cheney, did. like I always say, oh, Donald Trump, where were you when that war vote went down in the early O's? Grabbing women by the you-know-whats? Because I didn't see you in any of those protest march, Donald Trump. I didn't see you sticking your neck out like all the lefties of the land who took the hard stand. As for all those Republicans who voted against Liz Cheney, they're the same bunch who fell in line to vote for the war like they're falling in line to vote for Donald Trump. So don't use the warmongering to justify cutting Liz Cheney off at the knees. You would be singing her praise, Donald Trump, if she voted your way. You'd be honoring her. You'd be talking up her daddy, just like you honored Rush Limbaugh and Newt Gingrich and all the other war hawks in your party. You don't care what they did in 2003 and 2002 in regards to the Iraqi war, so long as they're obedient to you in 2021. As a longtime Chicago political observer, I find myself asking the question, who's the bigger rubber stamper, the bigger coward? Republicans in Congress who bow to the grand imperial wizard, Donald Trump, or aldermen in the Chicago City Council who have routinely, down through the years, bowed to powerful mayors like Richard J. Daley, Richard M. Daley, and Mayor Rahm? Tough question. But I'll say this about the aldermen. At least they displayed their cowardice out in the open, where all could see it. They didn't hide behind a voice vote in a secret meeting hidden from view. The grand old party has to change its mascot from an elephant to a chicken, as in cluck, 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 cluck. Cluck, 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 cluck. Whatever you say, Donnie, we do. We got a great show today, everybody. Maya Dukmasova will be here. I have been dying to talk to Maya ever since Hackingate opened. Hackingate, of course, is what's been going down in this city. Not getting a lot of coverage. Some hackers got into the emails, showing like the internal emails in the Laurie Lightfoot administration, and that Laurie's staffers and aides sent to each other. Ooh, Maya Dukmasova is joining us already. And one of those emails was from Maya. So I reached out to her and she agreed to come on the show and talk about it. Looking forward to that conversation. And then the other mighty M on the Ben Joravsky Show, Monroe Anderson, would be, we'd bring Monroe back to talk about what went down this morning with Liz Cheney. He is dying to talk about that. So we got Maya talking about Hackingate in Chicago, Monroe talking about Liz Cheney in Washington. We're going to take a brief break, and when we return, Maya will be with us. Stick around, everybody.
separate issue. There will be a time and a place for that. You are out of order, sir.
They say they want to level with you, like they level public housing and they're leveling schools. You gotta file just to beg for the truth, and if they reject it, then shame on you. Tax and credit financing,
little light of mine.
We've been the magic kids 1,000 times. We are the ones who fall in line.
I won't just turn the car around. I'm going to shut it off. I'm going to kick you out, and I'm going to make you walk home.
We are the ones who fall in line. We've been the magic kids 1,000 times. We are the ones who fall in line.
Take a chill pill, man.
How did you go from sharing stories over the years to deciding to write a book?
Good question, Mayor. Good question.
Still not a good question. Welcome back to the Ben Jarofsky Show, live from his attic.
We couldn't have Maya on the show without playing that a little bit. I was watching her on the screen. She was, I don't know, taking notes or something. And then all of a sudden she heard that good question, man. One of the greatest riffs ever in the history of the Ben Jarofsky Show. When the old studio, Maya walked in and she goes, I got to talk about, I should go find that, Maya, and replay it. That riff you went on about.
I think I have a still picture from that conversation where I'm just like throwing my hands up in the air.
Oh my goodness. Laurie Lightfoot, from the toughest mayor in the world to the gentlest questioner, as she asked Hillary Clinton the biggest puff piece question. Anyway, no puff piece questions here. I reached out to Maya yesterday. This story, I've been fascinated by it, Maya, and I haven't had a chance to really dig into it. I've been following it closely. And over the weekend, I don't know, maybe it was over the weekend, maybe it was last week. Anyway, emails were hacked by an outfit called Distributed Denial of Secrets. They posted it on the internet. Thousands and thousands of emails between Laurie Lightfoot staffers, mostly having to do with criminal justice issues, were hacked, and they're out there. You can read them yourself. I spent about a half an hour or so going through them yesterday. Interesting response from Laurie Lightfoot. Instead of dealing with questions about the substance of the emails, we'll get into this a little more with Maya. She's saying, well, in her opinion, there's a chance that they were possibly fabricated. So she's refusing to answer any questions about them, any of the specifics about them. So she's gonna ride this out. That's how she's gonna ride this one out. It's interesting public relations strategy. We'll get into that. But first, Maya, I want you to lead us through this. When I reached out to you yesterday, you alerted me to the fact that you were included in this email drop, an email that you had sent, totally legitimate email you had sent to the mayor's people seeking information last year. And why don't you just take us through what you discovered about what happens to a reporter's request for information once it goes to the information machine of the mayor. Take it away.
Yeah, so this was not the first or only time I've ever reached out to the mayor's office for comment for a story. I don't frequently do stories which require comment from the mayor's office, but periodically it comes up. And this particular story, it was a co-published piece with The Appeal, which is a national publication, about the mayor's track record on police reform, given the promises that she had made when she was campaigning. And this was an assignment that I got in June, like in early to mid-June last year, right after all of the George Floyd protests tipped off, and there was tons of conversations about police reform. And so I reached out to one of the kind of lower level spokespeople at the mayor's office. I had a very tight deadline, so I had to reach out to her on like a Saturday, I believe. with a list of questions. So there were two kind of issues. So the story was partially about the campaign promises that Lori Lightfoot had made in terms of police reform and where she was at in terms of fulfilling them, but also about her particular relationship with the Grassroots Alliance for Police Accountability, the GAPA coalition, which part of her platform was running on passing the GAPA ordinance. And at that time, in mid-June of last year, the GAPA folks had told me that basically she had not talked to them for months, that she very abruptly stopped talking to them the previous March. And so the first part of my question, the questions I had for the mayor's office was about, any response that she might have to what they were saying about she had made a statement right after the protest started at a press conference saying that she's been in talks with GAPA, that they're in process of implementing this thing. And I heard from Desmond Yancey, who was like the head of the GAPA coalition, and he just like went off about this on the phone with me about how disingenuous it was for her to say this when she hadn't talked to them in months and her people hadn't been in active meetings with the GAPA folks for months. So I got a bunch of confirmation from various people about this. And so I asked her first to like respond to this, to that, like, why did she claim there was a final deal with GAPA that was close to being done when there hadn't been any talks about this for months? And then I sent them a list of like 18 or 20 platform points that were on her website as a candidate about police reform. I literally went through all of the documents that were still hanging out on her campaign website and went through like point by point and asked them, like, where are you at with implementing these campaign promises that she had made? And some of them were like pretty innocuous and sort of just general and straightforward, like creating a new chief diversity officer at the Chicago Police Department. Some of them were a little more nebulous, such as like eliminate intentional lying, which is like a very ambitious goal for a human being to make about any human endeavor. But like, okay, that was part of her platform. It's like eliminate intentional lying in the police department. Reduce the number of police misconduct claims, increase homicide clearance rates. There were a lot of promises. And some of these things were about police accountability and transparency within the police department. And some of them were about improving, the police department's performance on some of the things that they're supposedly doing and part of their official functions, such as solving homicide cases. So if you'll remember, she had also gone on TV, like right around the time of the protest, right afterwards, saying this was actually like once the video came out of the cops eating popcorn in Bobby Rush's office. So she, there was like a bunch of furious press conferences about it. And she came out and said that she was making like a 90-day promise to implement like these 4 reforms in the police department. And they were like community involvement and officer training, increasing quote unquote core competencies about neighborhoods, recruits orientation being done in the same district that they would be assigned to when they first got on the job, and like getting training for police to interact with youth. Mm-hmm. So these were things that were actually part of her original platform when she was running, but now like a year later, she was saying these were part of this 90-day push. So those were things that I assume they were basically admitting she had not done in her first year. But okay, anyway, so those are the questions I sent. And what I saw in these hacked emails was then the subsequent like chain of emails and communications of various spokespeople at the mayor's office and at the police department workshopping their answers to these questions.
Talk about that, workshopping your answers. You could see this, by the way, folks. Track it down. Well, Maya tweeted it out. She's such a millennial, man. She figured out how. I couldn't in a million years do what she did, but she got it out. All the information you need to see is embedded in this tweet. I found it fascinating. Now, we'll get into some people said it wasn't fascinating, but I've never been on the other side. I've always been outside government, and I've always been an outsider looking in. And generally, from my position, no one even talks to me at all.
Yeah.
So the notion that a reporter's query would result in, I think it was, I want to say, I'm doing this off the top of my head, about a week's worth of emails that it generated, or 5 days. I mean, you take a look at
like 4 days. 4 days.
4 days. Okay. All right. For a short week, but 4 days worth of emails back and forth. And there must have been at least a half dozen names who were being emailed. And it seemed to grow as the weeks went on, more and more people involved. I was struck by that everything is so orchestrated at City Hall these days. Go ahead. Everything is just so coordinated.
I mean, I think that it wasn't surprising to see this. I know that this is how, like, when you send questions to a government agency, especially when they're like pretty pointed questions, especially when they're questions about the agencies or various officials like failing in any way to do what they said they were going to do or what they're supposed to be doing, you know, you don't like the spokesperson for the agency or like the head of the agency is not just going to like respond to your question. Like everything is very carefully processed and looked over by a bunch of different people, by lawyers, by, you know, basically like flag people, the spin doctors, whatever. You know, I kind of have a basic awareness that this is what happens, especially at like a high level government agency. But it was just interesting to see it, to actually see it happening, because some of these people are a lot further up the food chain than I would have expected to be like answering questions from. I mean, I do think that part of the reason they even bothered to respond to me was because this was a co-published piece with a national publication. I think if I was only doing this for the reader, they wouldn't have even answered my questions. I'm sure I probably wouldn't have even heard back from them. But to see that there's a lot of people working on this, and there's a lot of people who are doing a lot of work, and then there's people who come in who don't really like. So, okay, look, coming at this from the perspective of like, this is someone's job. Like one of the first things that happens is the kind of one of the top communication guys in the mayor's office, Patrick Mullane, who was like a spokesman for the mayor, he crafts like long, detailed responses full of like all kinds of like, some specific and some very ambiguous statements, but in response essentially to like every single one of my questions, he has like some kind of crafted like several sentence response. Okay. And then he forwards that along with some like highlighted queries for other people. So mostly they were kind of like he was CCing people in the police department with regards to some of the questions I was asking. And this actually was the most interesting part to me. So when candidates are running for mayor, including Laurie Lightfoot, you know, they make 1,000,001 promises about everything they're going to do at the police department. They're starting with something as innocuous as hiring a chief diversity officer to something as general as eliminate intentional lying. So what's so fascinating about this email exchange is that then you have the mayor's spokesperson CCing spokespeople at the police department. And like, for example, with regards to the question of where are they at with hiring a chief diversity officer, Patrick Mullane is asking the CPD people, is this something that the department is considering at all? So this is a year after she's already been mayor. And her spokesperson is asking the police department spokesperson if they are maybe considering hiring a chief diversity officer, which was a promise that Laurie Lightfoot made to the people of Chicago, that she was going to make the department hire a chief diversity officer, which just tells you, like, how seriously you can take promises that anyone running for office makes about doing anything at the police department. Like that place is running by its own rules because they can't even put it like look, chief diversity officer, give me a break. That's just like that's like a C-suite executive official that, is here today, gone tomorrow. It's like literally one of the simplest things you can do within an agency with 16,000 sworn officers. Like, forget about changing the culture of the officers working on the street. Like, this is just like revolving door of figureheads at the top. They can't even install one of those people. So then when it comes down to like eliminate intentional lying, this is okay. So this is what Patrick Mullane writes regarding that question. Like, where are you at with eliminating intentional lying? So he responds, so he writes, like he drafts a little response, and then he puts a highlighted thing for the police department spokespeople to respond to. So his drafted response was, as part of the department's Article 5 Rules of Conduct, Rule 14, CPD prohibits any officer from intentionally lying and making a false report, written or oral. Like, she ran on a platform that included the promise to eliminate intentional lying at the police department. This guy is just telling me that they have a rule saying that they're not supposed to lie. Yes. But then he's asking the police department, this is the part he highlighted for them to respond to. He's saying, what else can be said here in terms of increasing accountability?
Yeah. Yeah, no, by the way, just for a moment, I've been watching Mayor of Easttown, just a brief tangent, which is a HBO show. I don't know if you've been watching it. And in that show, it's very enjoyable and whatever. Anyway, in that show, everybody freaking lies. Literally everybody is part of this charm of the show, and then they get caught in the lie. Just the notion that as a campaign, eliminate intentional lying in any entity, particularly the Chicago Police Department, is far-fetched. I just wanted to what's that? Go ahead. I just wanted to point something out, and I'm going to go old person on you. I am telling you, it was not always this way with inquiring reporters dealing with public information officers. Again, I'm going to go my high horse right here. These are public information officers, Maya. These are not spin doctors.
Obfuscation officers.
Yes. And they're acting like spin doctors for the mayor, which, okay, that's the way we're at. But when I first moved to Chicago back in the ancient years of the early 80s, literally I would call City Hall for a request. I was a lowly reporter in those days for the Reporter newspaper. And I would call and, oh God, I remember Bob Say, may he rest in peace. I think he passed on. Anyway, it would call you back and give you an answer. And it was like, it wasn't, maybe he had to talk to gather some information from some bureaucrat. You follow what I'm saying? Let me get back to you, Ben, in about half an hour. And then they would get back to you and let the chips fall where they may with their answer. This is an orchestrated response. This is, first of all, everything's in email. So like Bob Say would just say it to me over the phone. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, nobody will tell you anything verbally on the record. Like the only time they talk to you verbally is on background, on the phone, and you can't quote them on anything that they say to you, like verbally. Yeah. Like everything that you're technically like that they consent to being quoted on is always an email, and it's always like the safest possible thing you can say. Like, what can you say without saying really as little as possible of anything? Like that's just a PR game like that. I mean, but I think, look, this is not just like a problem in the city of Chicago. This is just the way that like public relations and communication works on a global scale in the year of 2021. Yeah. Like this is how corporations communicate. This is how governments communicate. This is unfortunately just like part of the game. This is why it's so important to do journalism based on public records and tell stories not based on statements from officials, but based on their internal communications, right?
Absolutely.
And their own internal reporting and their data. Right? Because that tells like a way clearer story about what's actually happening than whatever the hell these like 15 PR people are going to tell you.
Absolutely. Statements are utterly worthless. And by the way, I'm just going to take this, the change in Chicago, I'm thinking of writing about this. The change in Chicago began with Daley. And it was Daley who brought in the notion that no longer were public information officers public information officers, but they were essentially political strategists who work with the daily campaign apparatus to put out a message. In that case, in the case of Daley, the message is that the mayor was all powerful, all wise, perfect in every way. A message that was largely seconded by both major newspapers. But that's when I've seen every administration get a little more sophisticated with this approach. Rahm Emanuel brought in the system that you're confronting now, where they don't only on background, off the record, you know what I'm saying, which is utterly absurd. And that's like a guy like me. I mean, I give credit. I'm going to give some shout out. Steve Brown, Michael Madigan's longtime spokesman. He's old school. You just call him. I don't know if you ever had to deal with. You call him up. He's going to tell you whatever he's going to tell you. You may laugh at it in disbelief. And Steve, I can't believe you think anybody's going to fall for that line. He'll tell you a few jokes. It's over. He doesn't have to call 20 different people in the bureaucracy to stitch together. That's an old school thing. So these hacked emails show, Maya, is a sophisticated modern operation. And I'll throw this at you. I'm not in any way complimenting Donald Trump, but he at least deviated from this when he took control of
that's why people were finding him to be so like refreshing and persuasive. You know, like people who didn't really care about the content of what he was saying. Like so many people were totally like mesmerized by the style, by just like talking directly. So, and you know, I think there's some level of fascination with, I think, Bernie Sanders for the same reason. This is why populists are popular. Like part of like being a populist is like not doing this kind of thing, not like having everything you say be massaged and focus grouped and like, you know, lawyered to make sure that you're taking the least amount of risk possible to say the most general kind of thing. I mean, one of the things they do too is they include, like in addition to responses to my questions, right? They're also, you know, they have like a kind of a general statement about their track record with GAPA, but then they also, you know, there's like these exchanges where people want to, they want to have like they want to send me like a value statement, as you know, as part of this, like, you know, response to my questions. And the last of the emails on this is one of the last emails on this is an email from Carolyn Jacobs, who was like the former, I guess, deputy corporation counsel. Yeah, she was a deputy corporation counsel. She's been out since December, so she doesn't work there anymore. But so she was, she also worked at Mayer Brown, which is the law firm that Lightfoot worked at before. And she like is also part of workshopping this value statement. And then she says, above the stuff that she's writing to like send to me, she writes this really weird statement that actually Greg Pratt was tweeting about when he retweeted my what I tweeted about this email exchange. He pointed out how wild this is, the stuff that she wrote, which was that she said, I actually agree with the idea of reforming these communities, which it seems like is a reference to like communities of color. Mm-hmm. She's saying, I actually agree with the idea of this doesn't seem to be talking about the police. This seems to be talking about like poor communities of color in the city. She said, I actually agree with the idea of reforming these communities. God knows values such as intact families, education, work ethic, religion, etc., are the building blocks of success in all societies. As young people, we think this is old-fashioned. As we mature, we see this is not only true, but the alternatives lead to chaos. Only bolded sentences or items were edited. Please pass these along. Karen.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
that is very
like,
revealing.
You also get a little bit of a feel for how these folks think about people in this city.
Yeah.
Which is also like very revealing.
Yeah, it was very revealing. And by the way, so your thoughts about Laurie Lightfoot's response to the hacking in general, where she gave the press conference yesterday. We talked about it yesterday on the show, where she had the press conference, and she said that she couldn't guarantee the legitimacy, the validity of the emails, that there may have been some sorts of fabrication that she did. She just sort of suggested that was possibly the case. And they were also stolen. So as a result, her administration was refusing to answer any questions stemming from the emails. What's your thoughts about that as a response?
Yeah, it's an interesting strategy for like trying to ride out the news cycle on them, to see like, oh, we're not going to make any statements yet because some of this might be fake, in the hopes that like in a week or two, people are going to be asking less questions about it. There'll be some new crisis to talk about, and they won't have to discuss this. But I will say that, like, if this stuff was fake, they would have been like out there with all kinds of PowerPoint slides about, proving that there was some kind of fabrication or alteration or whatever. And there are like hundreds of people involved in these emails. Like, you would think that a lot of them would be coming forward saying, like, for example, Carolyn Jacobs, like, if this was a fake thing, if this wasn't actually something she wrote, you don't think she'd be putting out press releases saying, like, here's the actual email I sent. This is trying to like besmirch my reputation. This is a fake email. Like, this is not to be trusted. So I just feel like we would have been having, seeing a lot more beef and a lot more evidence of the fakeness of this beyond the mayor just suggesting that by now.
And by the way, if that was her intent, was to ride it out, it's not been wholly successful, because the Sun-Times, and let's give Tommy Schuber credit, has done 2 stories based on information they've elicited from the emails. Block Club came out with a really good story that I just read before we went on the air.
Southside Weekly too. They did a wonderful story about how she was lobbying, how Mayor Laurie Lightfoot was quietly lobbying for qualified immunity for cops. They just put this out on May 6th.
I may actually just put it all together, just some of the information that was released. And I'm all over the map when it comes to hacking emails. I wouldn't want my personal emails hacked. On the other hand, I've been always watching government, the behavior of our government officials, very skeptical about what they say. And so it's so revealing when you see what's going on behind the scenes. Like that comment that you just alluded to that Greg Pratt picked up on in his tweet. It's just very revealing. Anyway, Monroe Anderson is standing by. We're going to switch our topic of conversation to Liz Cheney and the Republicans. Maya, I just have to ask you this question, just kind of putting you on the spot here. Are you intending to write an article about this, or are you going to let it go?
Well, I think that if I do write an article about this, it's not going to be about my own cropping up in these emails. Like, I'm curious to see other issues that they may be talking about that are part of my beat. So there's a lot of reading I still have left to do. I'm definitely not writing an article about their responses to me. That doesn't need more than a tweet.
All right, fair enough. But and then one last comment before we go. When Maya put the tweet out, Kelly Quinn, my old friend, used to work PR in town, and Maya go, "This is fascinating." And Kelly Quinn, man,
look, give people some context. She was part of the crisis management team around the Laquan McDonald scandal for Ron.
Yes, thank you. I was going to go there, but before that, she worked for Blagojevich. I don't know if you knew that. Anyway, neither here nor there. She writes, but there's nothing fascinating about this. I'm like, once a dissembler, always a dissembler. Just run along, little kiddies. No reason to look at this.
Yeah.
Anyway, the maestro, by the way, is on deck waiting to come on at dissembling. He was a press secretary. I don't know if you know this, Maya, for Gene Sawyer back in the day. Monroe Anderson knew how to deal with pesky reporters like you and me. But we're going to be talking about Liz Cheney. And so, Maya, thank you so much for coming on at short notice. I appreciate it. When we return, Monroe Anderson talking Liz Cheney. We'll be right back.
Madam Secretary, you talk a lot about the mothers of your friends, where you went to their houses and you knew that they were going to be kind and generous and supportive of you. So that theme of women being present and how they make a difference, talk a little bit about that and how that, again, animated some of the selections that you made of people in the book.
That's a great question, Mayor, because I wanted to include women who I could distinctly remember the impact that they had on me.
And now, the list of things that you can buy at the Chicago Reader store at chicagoreader.com. Things to wear like Chicago Reader hats, t-shirts, bandanas, and face masks. Things for your daily life like the Chicago Reader camping mug, Chicago Reader tote bags, and a Chicago Reader reporter's notebook. Things for you to read like our reader recipes, the Chicago Reader 420 companion, our Chicago Reader best of book series from journalists Maya Dukmasova, Mike Sula, Ben Jarofsky, and Leor Galil, the Chicago Reader coloring book, and the Chicago Reader stay home puzzle. Find the Chicago Reader store at chicagoreader.com and show your support for the nation's first free weekly newspaper since 1971. Welcome back to the Ben Jarofsky Show, live from his attic.
I'm Monroe Anderson, legendary Chicago journalist, former press secretary Eugene Sawyer is a regular on this show. He's been taking a little time off from our show because he's busy putting the finishing touches on a book. But with Liz Cheney's situation coming down, I called him up. I go, come on, Monroe, you got to come back. You got to talk about Trump may not be the president, but he is still the ruler of the Republican Party, and Trumpism is still very much alive. And I would say, Monroe, that was on display this morning with the Liz Cheney vote, but those cowards, they didn't even do a public vote. They went hiding, little chicken. But the end result was on display. Go ahead, Monroe.
They loaned their spines out to somebody. I'm not sure, but they have none, zero. And plus, Trump is running the Republican Party like a New York mob boss. And so he tells them what to do, and he doesn't have to spell it out. You know, he just uses a few key phrases here and there, invites them to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring, and then go about his business.
Mm. Well, Liz Cheney, the congresswoman from Wyoming, daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney.
Yeah, shoot him in the face, Cheney.
Yes, that's right. Scalia. No, it wasn't. It was who was it that they shot in the face? It was
one of his friends.
One of his friends, but I think Scalia was on that hunting trip.
It was one of his friends.
Down in
the typical Republican, he says, he shot me in the face. It's okay.
Yeah, no, he did. You guys Republicans. It's okay.
I probably deserved it.
I probably did. And even if I didn't, thank you, Master. Can I have another? So Liz Cheney, I despise the politics of Dick Cheney, and I oppose the war of Dick Cheney. Wrote articles about the protests here in Chicago. But I got to tell you, in this day and age, I find I appreciate the stand. Let me just put it that way, that Liz Cheney has taken, Monroe, because she's essentially saying that she doesn't care if she loses her seat.
Yeah. No, this is good. But with her and Adam Kinzinger,
whatever.
Right, exactly. With both of them, you got to remember they're still Republicans. They're still conservative. They might be doing a good thing right now, but they will disappoint and anger you tomorrow or next week.
You are so correct. And in fact, to that point, in the essay, I may have mentioned this to you on the phone, in the essay that Liz Cheney wrote, her declarations of independence from Donald Trump and Trumpism that she wrote for the Washington Post, which is widely heralded. At the end, she went on this thing about the woke radical Democrats. Like, oh my goodness, there we go. Woke Democrats.
Right.
She had
the best Republican is bad. if you remember that, you're in good shape.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have time, go back and listen to the interview I did with Monroe when Willie Wilson walked into the room. It is hilarious. Willie Wilson, of course, longtime Republican, although Willie kind of hides it. You know, he's like, I'm an independent man, but I voted for Trump. I voted for Rauner. Monroe goes, Willie, you're thinking like a millionaire right now. You're thinking, because he was going on about taxes and stuff.
Right. No.
You're right. So, Dennis, we have a little bit of Liz Cheney's speech. Monroe asked us to play a little bit about it, and so we could comment on it. We haven't played it yet. This is a speech that Liz Cheney delivered. Let's see, what is today? Today is Wednesday, so she delivered it yesterday in Congress. I don't think anybody was listening in Congress, or there were very few people there.
Well, they left. They literally all but one Republican left when she started talking.
What a bunch of cowards.
So not only are they spineless, but they're rude.
Yes, which is worse. So Dennis is going to play this for us right now. And
seen before. A former president who provoked a violent attack on this Capitol in an effort to steal the election has resumed his aggressive effort to convince Americans that the election was stolen from him. He risks inciting further violence. Millions of Americans have been misled by the former president. They have heard only his words, but not the truth, as he continues to undermine our democratic process, sowing seeds of doubt about whether democracy really works at all. Remaining silent and ignoring the lie emboldens the liar. I will not participate in that. I will not sit back and watch in silence while others lead our party down a path that abandons the rule of law and joins the former president's crusade to undermine our democracy.
Very good. Thanks, Dee. Monroe.
Yes.
Remaining silent emboldens the liar. How emboldened is the liar right now?
Oh no, he is flying high as he can. Since he's a little bit overweight, but anyway, he's running the party, and he's acting like, and they're acting like he's the president, which is just amazing to me. I mean, this man, he is this incredible loser, and they embrace him. I mean, he is the first president since Hoover.
Mm-hmm.
Since Hoover, who managed to lose the House, the Senate, and the White House. Mm-hmm. I mean, the only president in modern history that's done that, and yet they're clinging to his funky coattails.
Yeah. Well, there is some method to their madness, which I will lay out for you and then get your thoughts. And part of this is I elicited from you yesterday when we were chatting. The strategy that they're following is essentially to recapture the House and maybe even the Senate by putting up laws intended to suppress the black vote and riling up MAGA. And if they're convinced that if they are successful at riling up MAGA and suppressing the black vote, they could take back the House,
yes,
and the Senate. And that's their strategy. And the key to that is Donald John Trump, because MAGA, you think the Republicans in Congress are going to follow Trump off a cliff. MAGA has fallen in love with Donald Trump, and it is a cult-like obedience to the Grand Wizard. What's your thoughts on how dangerous and potentially successful their strategy is? Go ahead.
It's dangerous because if successful, America will no longer be what we think of it as. It'll be closer to Putin's Russia. or someplace like that. And Trump right now is on a revenge trip with anybody who voted against him or said anything nasty about him in response to the nasty things he said about them. I mean, he's doing a punishing where he's calling the shots. And this is part of what has the Republican politicians in Washington afraid, is that they're worried that he will run somebody against them who will then lose to the Democrat because the person is so terrible as a Trump supporter. But that's another story. I mean, this is so crazy. In the meantime, if you go to my Facebook wall, what you'll see is I've posted this story about 100 Republicans are threatening to leave the party unless it separates itself from Trump. But most of those Republicans already in office are up for election, So we need more Liz Cheney's and Adam
Kinzinger. You know what you want to do, and I want to do the same thing because we're baby boomers. We want to turn it into Kissinger.
Yeah,
and
right.
That's what we're used to. We see it's like I'm on a tangent within a tangent. There is a player on the Chicago Bulls named Denzel Valentine. When I see the name Denzel, every part of my body is screaming, the next word will be Washington.
Right.
There's only one Denzel. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's the same thing with Kinzinger and Kissinger, whatever. Old habits are hard to break.
Right.
How seriously do you take this as a political force, the declaration that some Republicans will break
this
from the
is
party?
the situation, and everybody, right and left, is saying the same thing, that the Republicans are going to win back the House next year, because historically that's what happens when one party is in the White House, the other party wins the House in the midterms. However, I would argue that history is not law. Just because it happened 10 times before doesn't mean that it's guaranteed to happen again. And with the Republicans at war with each other, and with Biden's popularity and running of the government so slickly and wisely, I don't think they're going to do it. I don't think they're going to be able to do it.
In other words, you think that Biden, the Democrats will hold the House?
No, I think the Democrats will hold it. Particularly, there's one thing that they really, really, really need to do, and that's kill the filibuster. Because if they kill the filibuster, then they can pass laws that will stop all the suppression laws that are spreading across the country. Now, this may not last forever, simply because you have Roberts as the Chief Justice. Mm-hmm. He's the guy who brought you the corporation as human, mm-hmm. so that they can put all this dirty money into the elections. And if the Democrats pass a voting rights bill, at some point it will get to the Supreme Court, and he'll know what to do with it to mess it up.
Yeah.
But if they kill the filibuster, mm-hmm. then what the Democrats could also do is fix the Supreme Court. Correct its weightiness at this point.
Adding more members.
Adding more members.
Well, okay.
They have to be radical. They have a year to do all kind of radical things.
Yeah,
and they've got to do it.
What you're suggesting and proposing. By the way, David Ferris, a good friend of the show, has been saying this for at least 5 years.
Yeah.
This is the Democrats have to start thinking this way. He said this before. He wrote a book about this even before Donald Trump had taken office. What you're suggesting and proposing, of course, requires a radical realignment of the Democratic Party, because Joe Biden, as a centrist, that's how he got elected, even though he's more of a leftist in terms since he's been in office. But as a centrist,
he's been more left than Obama or Clinton,
which says absolutely nothing, because those are the two biggest disappointments of my lifetime, Monroe. Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. Don't get me started. You know where I'm going to. How many principles did they sell out to get where they got and to stay there? And
Obama never had those principles. Those principles were assigned to Obama by people who liked him and liked the idea of his being the first black president, et cetera. So they assigned all this stuff that he never said. In fact, if you stop and think about it, even with gay marriage, it was Biden that forced his hand on that. He was still not for it until Biden said,
as I always like to point out, he underwent two evolutions on gay marriage. First, he was for it when he was a state senator from very liberal Hyde Park. Then he was against it when he was running statewide to become senator. And then when he was a second-term president, so he was not going to have to run again, then he evolved back to his original position. Just proving your point, Monroe, Obama had that finger to the wind his entire political career, which is probably why he ultimately succeeded. Although I was thinking about this, Monroe. This is a tangent within a tangent.
Okay.
I was thinking about Bobby Rush.
Yeah.
And how he has stood the test of time in so many ways. And part of this was because I saw Judas and the Black Messiah again, which is the movie about the killing of Fred Hampton. And Bobby Rush was one of the leaders of the Black Panthers, and a very young Bobby Rush, just out of the Army in his early 20s. And in the movie, there's an actor who plays Bobby Rush. And I was just thinking about how Bobby Rush stood the test of time. And in 1999, he ran for mayor against Daley, and the year later, Barack Obama ran against him for Congress. And I've always been convinced, Monroe, without any proof, because I'm not on the inside, that the Daleys of the world talked Barack Obama into running against Bobby Rush, sort of as a way of punishing Bobby Rush for having the temerity to run against His Highness Richard M. Daley. And it just kind of got me respecting Bobby Rush that much more, because he trashed and trounced Barack Obama, as you recall, in the 2000 election. Who would you vote for in that election, Monroe? Barack Obama or Bobby Rush?
Oh, okay. Bobby and I have been friends a very long time. I had lunch with Barack Obama once during that time. I used to, back then, I used to take Bobby to a Bears game with Channel 2's Skybox once a year. He would be my guest, and we watch a Bears game together. So it'd be easy.
That was easy. I would have voted for Bobby. I wasn't in the. By the way, I never got invited to the Bears game in the Channel 2 Skybox.
You were the congressman. The car salesman who also had been invited loved having a congressman sitting in the skybox watching the Bears. And the sales department who controlled who got to go to the games or not. They gave me a once a year shot because I could do that.
I got it. They're going to waste that ticket on a hippie, some old hippie for the reader. That's all good. I forgive you. I understand. I would have invited Bobby Rush too.
Right.
Go ahead.
We were there for the Fog game.
Oh, against the Philadelphia Eagles playoff game. I think that was
where you couldn't see anything.
Yeah, which is just as well because it was a pretty boring game. But the Bears were victorious. Anyway, yes, you got me on that tangent about Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, two of the most disappointing politicians. But you're right. You know what? You make a valid point. I shouldn't be disappointed in Barack Obama because he never promised to be anything other than what he was or is, which is got my finger to the wind, centrist Democrat who thinks that Rahm Emanuel.
That's not what he said he was. He said it was no such thing as blue states and red states. It was just America, and that summed it up.
That's, you know what, Monroe, Barack Obama said he stopped smoking reefer back in high school, but man, he must have been smoking some when he said that, because that's pure fabrication. I
think he believed that stuff.
I actually think he believed what he said when he said it?
He believed it, yeah. And that's how he tried to run the office, and until Mitch McConnell gave him a few lessons, took him to church, to school on how real politics work.
Monroe Anderson, tell me this.
Yes.
How could any black man in America really believe in his heart of hearts that there are no red states and there are no blue states? Just think about the Civil War, Jim Crow, the way they destroyed Reconstruction.
Yeah, but okay, as is unique to America, back when the Civil War happened, Republicans were the liberals and Democrats were the villains. And that continued pretty much until we got FDR. The Republicans were the progressives on this. I mean, they
more or less,
they wanted to free the slave. I mean, as much as anybody white in America is, of course. But anyway, they've changed seats and dance partners.
Yeah, I still. By the way, this is on my list. We've talked about Senator Tim Scott many times in the show. Monroe, I haven't mentioned this to you. He's become such an instrumental part in the Republican propaganda machine since the last time you and I talked. I should start sending you them, although you'd just be irritated by them. A half dozen Tim Scott emails a day. Team Scott. They call it Team Scott.
Yeah, because they know you. They can turn you out. Ben Jaworski, he's this close to coming to our side. We just got to hit him with a few more emails.
This will push him over. Let's send him a Team Scott. And then they're like always crying. It's like the headline of the latest one, which I was going to send you today and I forgot. They call me Uncle Tim, and Uncle Tom, and they're so mean.
Well, if you recall, another one of my favorite uncles, who's now in the Supreme Court, accused them of an electronic lynching or some kind of lynching.
High-tech lynching.
High-tech lynching, yeah. Right, that's the only time he was worried about black people when it was him.
Suddenly he discovered that race exists in the United States when he might not get what he wanted. Then he got what he wanted. He's like, well, forget the rest of you black people. I got mine.
Affirmative action. For affirmative action. I hate affirmative action, although it put me where I am. But
yeah, man. That is one of the most cynical moments of my lifetime, watching a great champion of civil rights, just a great judge and American, Thurgood Marshall, step down and get replaced by a political hack, Clarence Thomas. Well, with the idea, one's black, the other's black. What the hell, huh? And that was the Daddy Bush who did that.
No, they knew that what they were doing, because if you recall, before he became a Supreme Court judge, he was in charge of education. in terms of education. And he was doing to education then what Voss was doing 6 months ago.
Yeah. Wow, just 6 months ago, she was already gone. All right, you laid out a theory for me last night that I'd like you to share with listeners. And this is what you said to me when we were talking on the phone. You were pointing out how dangerous it would be if the Republicans were successful in their strategy to take back the House and the Senate, because you said that, in your opinion, very soon after those elections, they would make a movement to impeach Joe Biden. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it will be a revenge impeachment. And they would just they'd make up some lie. It would probably be Ukraine. They would, which has never been proven. In fact, it's been disproven. But they would bring it back. I mean, if they're successful in making Trump the true winner of the election and Biden not the president, then surely they can make him impeachable once they start their big lie machine going on that. And they would impeach him. If they had the power, they would impeach him as a revenge. I mean, well, because this would be Trump, of course, pulling all the levers as he's doing now. However, I don't think, I go back to, I don't think they can win. I don't think they will win. And I think Trump will fade into oblivion within a year and a half.
Well, first of all, I disagree with you on that point.
Yeah.
Because win or lose, because if the Republicans win, then Trump will be very much in command.
Right.
But if the Republicans lose, Trump will be under fire with prosecutions. And I do believe
he's going to be on fire with prosecutions regardless.
Well, it's going to be hard for the Justice Department to come after Donald John Trump if he's commanding the allegiance of the Republican Party. But give us your theory on that one.
No, not the Justice Department. New York.
Very good point.
Yeah. They don't care about the Justice Department.
Good point.
And they have all kinds of stuff on him. In fact, Rudy is a fat lady and he's about to sing.
Rudy Giuliani. Oh, my Lord. It's the fat lady he's about to sing. Yes, he is. Yeah. He's going to sing a song to protect himself.
Right, exactly. So, no, they got more stuff. They got, Trump literally has been a crime boss for decades, a couple of decades at least. And now the roosters are coming home. Yeah. The chickens are coming home to roost.
By the way, we were talking at length yesterday about Mick Dumke was on the show talking about Chicago corruption and Danny Scalise wearing the wire. And I just had this thought when you were saying that the fat lady's about to sing. Wouldn't that be amazing if all this time Rudy Giuliani been wearing a wire on Trump? You know what I'm saying? I just thought of that, like, wow, egging him on.
He's not been wearing a wire on it, Bob. But they got his phone, they got his electronic messages, and he thought of himself as an untouchable.
Yeah.
America's mayor and Trump's lawyer. So he just thought that he was untouchable. And had Trump won the election, he would have been. Yeah. I mean, that's what's changed on him is that we got a new sheriff in the Justice Department.
Yeah, Merrick Garland.
Yeah.
All right, Monroe, we're going to close by having you go local. And I told you about this yesterday. I've been following this obsessively. I talked about it with Maya before you came on the show. Some people hacked into, it's not clear who did it. Originally, it may have been Russian hackers. Not quite sure who did it, but it was distributed on the internet by a group called Distributed Denial of Secrets. Hundreds and hundreds of email circulating among Laurie Lightfoot's crew on, like Maya was featured in there. Like she sent a request for comment from the mayor's office, and then all the emails that her request generated were part of the onslaught that was leaked. So Laurie's strategy, which I think is a pretty interesting one, I had to give her credit, is to say, well, these were stolen emails, and I'm not even quite sure that they aren't fabricated. So I'm going to urge and recommend that you reporters not report on them. Like any reporter is going to take her advice. Oh, journalistic advice from Laurie Lightfoot. And we are not going to be commenting about them, which as a former spin master for Eugene Sawyer, what do you think of that as a tactic to deal with press and their questions on hacked emails?
Oh, well, it is stolen material. So just like if I showed up at your house with a big screen TV that had fallen off the back of a truck, you wouldn't take it, being the man of honor. So that's how I would play it. Now, what's interesting is that this is yet another victim of the pandemic. 2 years ago, the mayor's office would have had telephone calls that wouldn't be recorded. And they would have these same discussions, but they'd be talking, or they'd have meetings where everybody would get together in small groups and discuss one at a time or something. But with the virus going on, then now you're accustomed to doing everything at a distance. And the problem with emails, as everyone knows, is that once an email, always an email.
It leaves a trail.
Disappear, right? Exactly. They don't disappear. So,
well, you know, I was
those two mistresses you have. Don't send them emails.
Yeah. 101.
Right.
I was reminiscing on Maya's behalf. Maya's much younger than I am. She's a millennial. And I was saying, when I first came to Chicago, when I'd call City Hall for comment, I never had the feeling that it sparked so much, paper pushing and filibustering and trying to figure things out. I like the spokesperson would get back to me in like within a half an hour with some canned statement that was probably baloney, but that was it, Right. And I remember dealing with you. It was in the Sawyer years. Was like, what was your? First of all, you would laugh at the question and tell me how dumb it was, and that's no story. This is 101, lady. That's no story. Only you would waste your time doing a story like. Then you were done with the trash talking. You would come up with some answer. But the notion that they'd spend a week, Monroe.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Strategizing for the perfect response. I don't know.
Yeah. Well. Times are different, as you know. Back then, because I had been a journalist and had planned on being a journalist after my stint at City Hall, I tried to be as much of a straight shooter as possible.
Yeah.
But I did have to play in the arena. So, for example, there was some story, I can't remember what it was, that came through, or it was a freedom of the press request.
Freedom of information, yeah.
Freedom of information request. And so I take it up to the mayor, who tells me to talk to Sharon Gilliam, and Sharon says, sit on it.
She was a former budget director.
For a month or something like that. Not that we won't do it, but we won't do it right away. So,
the secrets. Right. I think I was the one who filed that request.
Yeah, you may have been.
I'm still waiting for that response. When is that response coming?
It's just what I was going to make sure that you got it. Daily one. So
I see. Let's just add that.
The next administration. In fact, I couldn't even get it for WBBM TV, where I went to work next.
No, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the downfall, in my humble opinion, began with Mayor Richard M. Daley in terms of public information. We went from a system that was Ben calling Monroe, or Ben calling Bob Say, or Ben calling Steve Brown, and not just me, but any reporter, and getting a response. And like I said, you'd have to put up with trash talking. You'd have to put up with them mocking your story and making fun of your publication. You had to put up with them putting these canned responses together. You knew were nonsense, but at least you got a response. You know what I mean? It wasn't a response by committee.
Right. No,
Daily-
because I ran the press office, and I had people within the administration angry with me all the time because I did respond. But again, I was a journalist who understood the needs of journalists and tried to accommodate them. Whereas in government, they don't want to accommodate.
Now they're all spin doctors. Everybody's the next David Axelrod. All right, Monroe, I'm going to let you go. Get back to your business. Get back to that book. Hurry up and finish it. I knew I had to reach out to you, though. This is a big day. Liz Cheney, was ousted from the Republican Party. And you're right. Donald Trump is ruling that party like a mob boss.
Right.
And
well, we have Trumpism going on now. Trump is gone from the Oval Office, but not forgotten. And so our battle continues. And therefore, even though I'm writing my chapter for a book, not an entire book, a chapter on Sawyer, I think I better help fight the battle.
Yes.
On the podcast.
Yes, you got to get back in the fray full time, because this is no joke as we head into the new election season. And it's already starting. There's the recall in California. That's MAGA. That's up there. That's inspired by MAGA. All the laws being passed across the country, they're essentially intended to, one, suppress the black vote, and two, replace independent overseers with puppets. That's what they're really trying to do, Monroe. You know that as well as I do.
And my Trump nut friends on Facebook, now what they're doing is they're talking about how the gas is going up. Gas prices are going up, and there's a war in Israel. Anything that's not perfect is Biden's fault.
Yeah.
Right.
No, gas prices.
They excuse everything that Trump did.
Yeah. Absolutely. And whenever anything like a gas price went up under Trump, that was Obama's fault.
Right.
All right, Monroe Anderson, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Appreciate it as always. And I also want to thank Maya Dukmasova, who was on the show before Monroe. And of course, the man, the myth, the legend, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois, without whom the show would be possible. The man that Maya and Monroe proudly call Dr. D. Give yourself a raise, take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows, Benny J bonus interviews, over 1,000 episodes, and so much more. ChicagoReader.com/Joravsky, or wherever else you download podcasts. You can always send us an email, BennyJShow@gmail.com. BENNY, the letter J, show@gmail.com. You can reach us on social media at Benny J Show, and you can call our program. It's true. 708-658-4788. 708-658-4788. Call the Ben Joravsky Show.
I won't just turn the car around. I won't just